University High School in Oakland, on 58th at Grove, which is now Martin Luther King Boulevard. Graduated at 17 in 1942, and I got an athletic scholarship at the University of California, and the grand total was $21 a semester was what an athletic scholarship was worth. That was tuition. I saw on the paper just yesterday that the tuition for one semester is now $12,000. At the time I was 6'1" and about 205 pounds. And I played nothing but single wing. And in single wing I was left end. And in our day you played 60 minutes. You played both ways, and I was considered a lineman. And I was a pretty big lineman for our day. Nowadays, 210 pounds doesn't even get you a halfback's job. And the only thing I could really do was catch passes. Well, we didn't throw many passes. So I made the freshman team as a freshman. At that time, we were still single wing, and Stub Allison was our coach. I arrived up there, and the war was on at that point, but we were still playing, you know, freshman ball. I made the freshman team, and that freshman team was the best freshman team up until that point that Cal had ever had. I don't know if you recall some of the guys that played right after the war, Rod Franz and John Baker. John Baker was on that freshman team with me. John Baker ended up being one of my closest and best friends. I played against a kid that was in high school all-city at Fremont High. The hell was his name? Big tackle that played for Pappy and started it on those teams. He was on that freshman team. There was a kid named Johnny Graves who was everything. He was probably all state out of Piedmont High. That ended up playing for Stanford after the war. And of course Jackie Jensen was still a baby in those days. You know, we're talking 1942. And I turned 18 in November of 1942, having completed my first semester at Cal before I was 18. On my 18th birthday, I volunteered for the Army Air Corps. And so I left, and the rest is war, you know. I came back in late 1946 from the war, at which point Pappy Waldorf was here, his first year. And went out for football, and he saw that I had an athletic scholarship, so he says, show me what you got, you know. So I did, and at least temporarily I was a starter until the first game. And on the first game that Pappy coached at Cal was against Wisconsin at Fort, whatever it is in Wisconsin. The hell's the field? Anywho, and at that time, this is the first big year of football after the war, Wisconsin had this fullback that was all everything. It was considered the best fullback in the United States, and they were going to kill us. They were 21 points favorite. And in those days, we didn't fly to the games. Even in 1946, we took a train. And so we arrive up there, and of course, you know, everything's bright red and intimidation. And Pappy was a great one for pre-scheduling the first 25 plays. At that point, we had our fullback was Jackie Jensen, who's probably the best football player I ever played with. Just absolute natural. Jack Swanner was our right halfback. Rod Franz and John Baker were two All-Americans at guard. Our quarterback was Erickson. First scripted play was what USC used to call student body right. Okay. We had big line, fast line, and Jackie Jensen. So in those days, it was straight T. None of this I and all that. Straight T formation. And the guards pulled, the left half and the right half pulled. So you had four people in front of Jack Jensen going wide, and I'm on that end. In those days, you had 2-on-1 blocking. The tackle and the end took on the defensive end. Now, their defensive end weighed about 280 pounds, and I was 205 pounds. So, here comes Jackie Jensen full blast around the corner. The tackle hits this big tackle. Our tackle hits this big tackle low. I hit him high. We bounce off of him. And this guy floors Jensen. Pappy, come on in. Come on in. And he says, do it again. And make that block. Okay. And I go, same thing. The guy goes right through us. Right through us. I mean, it's like we weren't even there. Pappy calls me in and he sit on the bench. That's the last time I played. I never got into another game. On the way home on the train, Pappy came and sat next to me for 5 minutes, and he says, Chuck, he says, you're not fast enough to play in our backfield, and you're not big enough to play in our line. So I'm going to have to put you down on the rounders. That's what we called our junior varsity in those days. I says, I'm not going on the rounders. He says, well, you're not going to play on this team. I said, well, I got the GI Bill anyhow, so I'm off the team. So that was the end of my football career. Fantastic, fantastic team. Really. I'd say it was one of the 5 best teams in the United States. And they proved it. They were that good.
Who won that Wisconsin game?
We won 35-14. We killed them. But we were 21 points underdogs. Because the year before, the coach was fired because he was a total incompetent, really, truly. And the the football team rebelled. I don't know if you read the history of Cal football, but I'm sure you have. They actually rebelled. They had a meeting that Erickson, the quarterback, led, demanding that the university get rid of the coach and hire a competent coach. We were that bad a team. They were that bad a team. I was still flying in the Air Force.
What was Jackie Jensen like?
Jackie?
Yeah.
Very quiet. Very quiet. And he married his high school girlfriend, who was an Olympic diver, you know, Zoanne Olson. And he was with Zoanne most of the time. And, you know, he was afraid to fly. He wouldn't fly. He just would not get in an airplane. And that's one of the reasons he didn't turn pro football. But he was also the star pitcher on the baseball team. He was an All-American baseball pitcher, plus probably the fastest guy on the baseball team. He sure as hell was the fastest guy on the football team. And I remember the first program I looked at, they listed Jack Jensen as 195 pounds. I've stood on next to the scale. Jack Jensen weighed 225 pounds when he was a freshman at Cal, out of Oakland High School. And he could do everything. He was our punter. He was our passer. He was our blocking fullback. Of course, in those days, the quarterback, under Pappy Waldorf, we didn't throw that many passes. He was Big Ten rock'em and sock'em. That's why I didn't make the team. You had to be big, strong, and nasty to play for him, and I wasn't.
What was he like as a guy, as a coach, as a man?
Nicest guy you ever wanted to talk to. The guys loved him. Loved him. But he had a deep voice. Chuck, you're not big enough to play in my line. And he brought in, the next week, he had a kid from Texas that he had just recruited. It was big, huge kid at end. Now, that's a lot of years ago, but it was a hell of an end. And he took my job. And I never put a uniform on again after that.
But you went into scouting for him, right?
Hmm?
You went into scouting for him, right? Can you tell me about how that came about?
Oh, yeah. Well, after I graduated...
what year was that?
1948. He asked me if I would like to be a scout. Because I had moved up to Sacramento and they needed a scout. And I said, gee, I'd love to. So, for a couple of years, Pappy would our head recruiter was a guy named Les Means, who was district attorney of Yolo County in Woodland. He ran the recruiting group in the Sacramento Valley. And what did we call ourselves up there? We had a tricky name for ours, but we were told in our recruiting process to inform the people we were talking to that we were not representing the football team at the University of California. We were representing the Alumni Association of the University of California. And he sent a predetermined list of 25 athletes in my area. My area was from Sacramento north to the Oregon border. And on Friday, I took off from work at noontime on Friday. And I would see at least one, if not two, high school football games every Friday. And in the valley, because it's so hot, they had night games, especially up around Redding and Red Bluff and Chico. It's way too hot even in October to play football. So I would catch a couple of day games and a night game every Friday at the schools that these 25 names, one of the players of the 25 names that Pappy wanted a separate point of view on, that they'd already been scouted, that he wanted another scouting, and then he wanted a meeting with the school. My job was to scout them, write a report, interview the coach, interview the principal, get a the grades.
Transcript.
A transcript. And unbelievably, we were welcomed with open arms by the coaches and the principals. They loved having somebody from the Alumni Association say that we have in mind this kid to give a scholarship to. That kind of a feather in their cap, I guess. And those were the days of the best athlete that I participated in recruiting was Dick
Bass?
Dick Bass at Vallejo. And I was brought down from Sacramento as another on Saturdays during the season. One of my jobs as a scout was to go up to Vallejo and pick up Dick Bass and his father and bring him. He's not going to come to Cal. He's going to UOP. In those days it was COP. And why? He says, because they gave my father a 4-year job as a custodian at $12,000 a year. In those days, $12,000 a year was very, very good money. Not for a custodian, but for somebody who has an education and is. But that's how they got him. You know, we were offering him nothing. Believe it or not, nothing. He gave room and board, the standard, but he was offered the scholarship and he turned it down. And he was good in college, but he would have been fantastic at Cal, you know. He was that good.